Once you pull the plug on USAID, it sets in motion a whole series of events, hopefully, to pull the plug on other government funding of the radical left. First up, though, is the hysteria I talked about a little bit last week over President Trump's efforts to curtail, rein in, audit, and control the massive entity known as USAID. Some people call it USAID. I call it USAID because that's what I've always called it. The United States Agency for International Development. And monies from USAID, and frankly from the State Department generally, are often used, and too often used, not for what people consider reasonable uses and purposes, truly charitable and aid, charitable type aid that people might support, but essentially to fund the left-wing infrastructure abroad, an infrastructure that's used to undermine American interests and values in various countries, and of course just generally undermine what most Americans believe should be taking place in various countries. They should have governments that are free and respectful of democratic norms, but not socialist and Marxist. And USAID works with the left to ensure the latter. And Judicial Watch has been investigating this issue for years and years, and I'll talk more about this, but I want to talk about how the big media and the left has responded to this. You've had Democratic politicians decide that no government spending should be looked at and controlled or even paused so it could be audited. So under the left's perspective, the government can never be controlled. And this is at odds with the very principles of our constitutional republic. There's a famous book written, I don't think it's the title, but you should look it up. I think it may be free on Amazon if you have an Amazon account. It is called The Political Control of the Administrative State. And that's the way the republic is supposed to work. That when you have a president, he's able to exercise political control of the administrative state. He's the elected official across the nation. And so within law, his policies and guidelines and values should be implemented. And that means monies that, unless they are required to go out, should not go out. And that funds and discretionary spending should be made in accordance with the values of the president as endorsed by the voters in electing him. Now, the left does not believe that President Trump should be able to exercise those presidential prerogatives. And so they've gone into inciting violence, encouraging insurrection, and sedition by government employees. And we've got a number of clips talking about these issues. Here's some left-wing congresswoman who is completely out of control. And watch this video.
We will not take this. We will fight back.
Fight back. Fight back.
And as I close out, because I know we've been out here for a long time, and goddamn it, shut down the Senate. We are at war. Anytime a person can pay $250 million into a campaign and they be given full access to the Department of Treasury of the United States of America, we are at war.
So Elon Musk, as an employee of the government of the United States working for the president, shouldn't be able to access material or resources or computer systems on behalf of the president? Is that how it works? Of course that's how it works. And they're willing to incite violence, shut down the city. What does that mean? Riots? We're at war? Why that violent rhetoric? Now, to give you up to date of what Musk has been trying to do, and with Marco Rubio working at the State Department, our Secretary of State, they are seeking to essentially neuter USAID as much as they're able under law. Now, there's a debate whether they can close it entirely, but in the least, Marco Rubio can exercise significant control over the agency and it seems to me either relieve of duty or move out or fire, whatever the term is or whatever the employee personnel move would be, these USAID bureaucrats and hangers-on that basically just spend our money in irresponsible ways. There's no doubt about it. Now, some of the courts have intervened in some of the moves Musk has tried to make. There's been some restriction on his ability or the ability of president's employees to access information at Treasury, which seems to be an odd legal position to have for a court. He's the chief executive. And then there's been a delay in the deadline set by President Trump's team in terms of offering people a way out of a resignation path by giving them several months of severance. Now, the deadline for people to decide whether to take it was Friday, but that deadline was extended. But nevertheless, 60,000 people, upwards of 60,000 people, have already said, hey, we'll resign, we'll take the money and go. So the federal employment is at 2.3, 2.4 million. We're broke. There's got to be cuts. And so this is all, relatively speaking, quite modest in terms of government spending, right? 60,000 employees out of a workforce of 2.3 million. $40 billion, whatever the bill is for USAID, out of a what's the budget now, 4 trillion? I remember when it was 1 trillion, I was outraged. So really modest reforms, and that's the reaction. Threats of death and violence from the left. And here are Democratic leaders in front, I believe, I think they're in the front of USAID, and they, again, more mob-type violence from the Democratic left here.
As you probably saw, Elon Musk and his crew put a gag order on AID employees. They disconnected them from email, which is putting lives at risk around the world. So we are here to enter the building, and so we can hear firsthand from whoever is here at AID, or at least witness firsthand what is happening with this Elon Musk attempted takeover, which will not stand. We will prevail. Let's go.
So how is that substantively different than January 6th, what you just saw there? The president's team had closed the building. So the building was closed. Yet these public officials and whoever they were, their left-wing allied activists were there trying to get into a closed building. Isn't that an insurrection? And then Schumer is making, in my view, a fool of himself. At least he wasn't directly advocating for violence like he has previously in targeting Supreme Court justices. And here I had a reaction video, kind of fun, to what he was saying.
We will win. 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 We won't rest. We won't rest.
I still think that's pretty funny. I'm still laughing about that. But there he's standing next to Maxine Waters, who has incited violence during the first term of Trump against cabinet officials. Told them to confront them. She told activists to confront them in a way that was guaranteed to incite violence and endanger their lives. And then, of course, what the left does for because a reporter asked me about this earlier today. And what happens is the left obviously is gravitates to the bureaucracies in government for many reasons. The most obvious of which is it's the easiest way to exercise unaccountable power and advance their agenda. And what happens is when you have reformers come in, and usually they oppose Republican appointees generally, the deep state does, the bureaucracies. And if it's a conservative Republican, it's all the more worse. And a conservative reformer, worse, worse, worse. And that's why Trump and his appointees had such initial problems in the first term. Well, he's much, much more aggressive and on point and in terms of speed, shock and awe, right? But you can see that's what they're doing to Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a patriot. He is concerned about the misuse and abuse of taxpayer resources. He is working on behalf of the President of the United States, asking questions that any normal citizen would ask. How are you spending the money that we earned? How can we save some money for taxpayers? They're taking our money and wasting it. Forget about the policy. It's like, well, can we get it done cheaper? And they hate that idea. I mean, first of all, because the easiest way to curtail government spending is stop defunding the left and their radical policy groups. And so what the left does is they try to isolate. They target first and then they isolate, harass, smear, and try to, frankly, destroy any reformers who take on the deep state. And you may think, well, who knows about USAID? Well, they know about USAID. Otherwise, they wouldn't be out there being crazy about it, because they know once you pull the plug on USAID, it sets in motion a whole series of events, hopefully, to pull the plug on other government funding of the radical left. And here is one of the most radical leftists in Congress, AOC, attacking Elon Musk for, quote, by the way, the head of 3 successful companies, the richest man in the world, literally a rocket scientist. And this is what AOC says about him.
First and foremost, understand that there is already a federal agency who is a watchdog on waste in the United States. That is known as the Government Accountability Office. So all of these people acting like, oh, we're going to set up an agency to identify waste, as though that's never been an idea before, take a number. These people, and I can tell you, in my experience, I have encountered many billionaires in my career. You all have seen many of those encounters in hearings, in other, forms of questioning, etc. I can tell you that this dude is probably one of the most unintelligent billionaires I have ever met or seen or witnessed. Which
can you believe that's a congressman? She's met all these billionaires and he's the stupidest or one of the most unintelligent. It's kind of a desperate smear of Musk. In part, it's been going on for years. Biden was trying to put him in jail essentially. And at least that's better than what you're going to see next. The left has literally resorted to just screaming. Rather than talking or persuading, trying to convince their fellow citizens, this is what the left is doing up in New York.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Well, this is disturbing behavior. Is this what free speech now is for the left? An inarticulate scream? Are these? To me, that's the flip side of violence. I'm not saying those people are violent, but if you're willing just to scream in response to your political opponents it's not a farce. It isn't too far removed, I think, from pursuing violence against them. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.